See if it,
Test, test.
I guess we would need.
Yeah. Oh,
Buddy. All right, we will try to. We're a couple minutes late. I had to run outside. I was looking for my phone and I realized I left it sitting on the back of my pickup. I ran out there real quick. It's a little warm, but it was 5 minutes. You know, good citizens. We right here.
Oh, you got it out.
Yeah, yeah. So, hey Sam. One of the things that that Gary, just a little point here that Gary brought, they had a hard time hearing the recording last time, and so they brought a couple of these microphones. I will try to, as best as Mike's got one, we can pass it around, that type of thing. I will try to, as best as possible, if there's a discussion or idea that we're writing on the board like we did last time, to kind of repeat that so that everybody has a chance to, so that, you know, that's gathered at least. So just real quickly, I have a formal agenda was in the email the other day, as well as on your table here. And then any comments or questions about the minutes? I sent both sets of, and Mike and I talked about, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, all I'm trying to realize that I chose you, Mike.
So we'll refer to them as notes in the future, because there's formal minutes that are out there on the website, maybe, or maybe not, but these will be the notes. So the second thing is for the agenda here is a mission statement. You've got in the notes, I put a mission statement, and I also put a draft together. I may have tweaked a couple words in the draft. So if you've got that in front of you, or I didn't make enough copies, I'll make more next time we do that kind of thing. But I did kind of try to summarize the notes that we put up there, and I just kind of want to walk through this and make sure that you guys are good with this. If there's any changes, if this is not what you perceive it to be, then let's make sure we're all on the same page with this now. That's all right. So I'll just read real quickly. Is everybody had a chance to read that? Take a look at it. The mission of our task force is to develop proactive, strategic growth recommendations for the Yankton County Commissioners to consider for long-term economic growth for the long-term good of the citizens of Yankton County. Got to get it all in there. Recommendations should include both near and long-term sustainability factors. I think that covers a healthy part of our conversation last meeting. Taking advantage of our current centers of excellence, understanding current limitations and defining opportunities to mitigate them, and then working with local state resources, including Office of Economic Development, District 3, Thrive County, and our communities. Any comments? Changes? You good with that? Cool. Stick that on the wall. Yeah, done.
Yeah, I think, just throw this out, I think we started with the idea that we were gonna gather several different sections of the economy, community, and together. So, wondering if we should change that strategic growth recommendation for the Commission to consider to a wider scope. Would like the school to take a shot at something that's fair. I'd like every entity that we have involved taking a look at it and saying, yeah, that makes sense.
What if we use the term of Yankton County stakeholders? That would cover everything. Could that work?
Yep.
So instead of see here. to the Yankton County, instead of commission, just change the commission to stakeholders? Is that what you're saying, Mike? I think so. Everybody good with that? You good? I like that. Oh, you feel free, Don. Give him the microphone.
Oh, plan.
To help us understand, I guess, Don, you're talking about the recommendations and the ideas. We would have an implementation plan.
Yeah,
Okay.
say, something that speak and their performance and the community. Like to see that detailed out a little more. Get a clue. Say, for example, GOED, District 3, those things there. How are we gonna work with them? How would we get them involved in the circle? That's a big part of the mission, I think.
Sure.
Does that still fall into recommendation? You gotta be careful when we switch from recommendation to plan or action. Those are two things that this group was not given authority to do. So I want to make sure we're clear. So that's why I say the word recommendation, maybe tweaking that is what we need to do. But we want to be very clear that we don't have authority to act on the behalf of all these stakeholders and interested parties. So
You're exactly right, but when something comes up, when an opportunity comes up, how are we gonna ensure that, it's acted on as possible, way we can act on?
by making a recommendation.
So Don, just to clarify, if we do, as we're going to do brainstorming, come up with ideas, obviously we can say, okay, we want to work with, the county or work with the city or work with whomever to kind of build a plan out on how something like that could be done. But are you saying you want us to work with other stakeholders? Let's say the school as an example, or maybe there's another stakeholder out there that would be keenly interested or at the center of this thing. And should we be pursuing a plan with them in advance of the county going, hey, we like that or we don't like that?
No, I see us going in at the end. All I want to do is something comes up and it's put in place. That's the opportunity.
So that's the second half of what I wanted to ask you then. So do you see this task force then living on into perpetuity? So when an opportunity comes up 3 years from now, then we are driving that somehow. That changes us from a task force to a committee,
Well,
from my perspective. And
whatever you want.
yeah. Okay.
I think if we set up a plan to implement.
I think I agree with you. I mean, I absolutely agree with you. And we had, in our earlier conversations, talked about the proactive side of this and where do we take it, Thrive and District 3 and things like that. They've all got people and resources that are paid that chase opportunities. And yet the county has, Gary, I think you do that, but I don't know if you see your mission there as proactive, pursue, help, guide, things like that, or make sure that whatever happens to come your way follows the appropriate guidelines. You know what I mean? And if your activity is the latter, what you're asking for is the proactive side of this thing. And so that changes, I guess, in my mind, what we were set up for. Not to say we can't continue to do that, but that's a discussion point for us.
I think we're
Yep,
in this, see, so,
sure.
not that we as any individual group. How do we process it through?
I just let you know it's hard to hear
Okay,
Okay.
we need to get it to a source that can act on it and decide if they want it. That's something that needs to be done, whatever the appropriate stakeholders are.
I still think that that's part of a recommendation, because I can tell Thrive and Nancy and Andy, you need to do this, or BY Water, you need to do this, or it is recommended that you do this for the betterment of Yankton County. It is ultimately up to their internal structure to decide to act on it or to align their enterprise core values to that.
Right.
I just think we need to be very cautious. We are not decision makers for those stakeholders. We are not in their internal org charts. Maybe Brad Beese is, but that's a different story. But I'm not in those stakeholders
Right.
org charts, so
Right.
I don't get to just come in and say, this will be good for everybody. You need to do it.
Right.
I can, however, come and say, we did the research, we went through the process, and this is that. How can we help?
Right.
And I still think that fits into what we are, a task force, a group that's going to recommend the next course of action. I mean, if the county commission supports us 100%, but the BY says we don't have the capacity to do that in our 5-year plan, then we can maybe look at that specific roadblock. How do we get that in their 5-year plan? Or how do we help them get that? But that's a specific action, maybe a smaller group, maybe identified who can help do that. I'm very, very cautious that if we're a jack of all trades, we become a master of none. So if what we're masters at is preparing a recommendation and explaining why and how, let the organizations explain to us what that would look like internal to them, what their constraints are, and then we can remove those barriers on a separate note. But I just worry we're not an organization to act or plan at this step. We're at a recommendation step.
I think it ties back to the need, again, for a county administrator, because that's the person that pulls us all together and could meet with a commit or a task force group like this and take stuff back to the county commission. But otherwise, the school, like sitting here, I don't feel like I'm a decision maker in this group. I'm here to collectively make some recommendations. And then being part of Yankton Thrive, that's where I see the bigger picture, where we're all in some way in here connected to that. The county, the city, the school, the districts, I mean.
Yep.
So I just think it lends itself to really good reason to have more discussion about a county administrator.
Yep.
Is the expertise in this room, can it be considered as a consulting group or not?
I think we're going to act in some capacity in that way. I mean, there's going to be stakeholders out here who aren't sitting in this room, and we're going to have what we think is a great idea. And then we're going to have to figure out how to involve them, present the idea, present the opportunity, work with them in some capacity, get other shareholders, stakeholders on board to drive something through. But ultimately, we're still recommending and we can act in that capacity, I think. I think so. Yep.
Like we always talk a little bit about too is, Dr. Kendall is a liaison to that entity, and so is Brad, but they don't have the final say.
Right.
Again, they're in here, they're brainstorming with us.
Right.
I agree, even at a county commissioner level, that's a little different role than an administrator, a paid position that is in that role of making sure that they are tying in with stakeholders and they're responsible for, they're part of the internal organizational structure. So I do think that should be, maybe not in our mission statement, but that needs to be a priority of us, is what does that even look like? Or how does that go? Because Don's a commissioner, Gary is an employee, they're liaisons. What does it look like to get somebody who actually is a subject matter expert on what we're looking for?
Sure, sure.
Let me see if I can summarize. I think what I'm right. You're
Perhaps
saying that we're going to come up with opportunities and identify opportunities here. And if we do,
Get that microphone.
we not only identify the opportunities, but we also lay out a plan, a stepwise plan to get from point A to point B. And we would present those opportunities then to the decision-making body. So our task force is going to brainstorm opportunities. We would create a proposed stepwise plan that then, if this task force decides that's the way to go, we would present that to the decision-making body. We're not making decisions. We're identifying an opportunity and we're presenting a plan. Does that more or less summarize what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think we'll work through it as we go. It'll become more evident in how we steer. So,
And I really think this is a mission statement that can grow with us.
Sure.
Or we can, is our mission to make the best shoes, or is our mission Nike, just do it, get people outside, right? Like, we gotta make sure we can grow, we can alter this. This is enough of a North Star that we can start moving forward.
When I when I went through mission statements and so forth in my prior work, we wanted them short and to the point, where you probably could say it in 1 or 2 sentences.
sure. I got 2 sentences. It take a little work to memorize all that, but there's a couple sentences. I always look at that, Don, as a vision. The vision is that thing that sits on top of this, that I didn't think it would make sense for this group to get too heavy into those layers, and I thought this could kind of be all encompassing yet as short as reasonable. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep. Okay. So are there any more changes you want to recommend to this, Don, or is it just good conversation for, okay. The other thing we talked about our last meeting is core values, and we had a bunch of words up there, and I tried to, as I was looking at this stuff a few days ago, they kind of were grouped in some categories. And so I tried to put those together here just as something to leave on the wall during our meetings that we can kind of refer to. But the core value, one of the categories we had was honesty and transparency builds trust. Okay, that was a big deal that we talked several words about. Another one is dialogue that is positive, civil, and open-minded inspires innovative collaboration. Keep it positive, keep it inspirational. So the last one was prioritizing the citizens of Yankton County. That kind of captured pretty much all the words that were written down. There were some that were kind of duplicative, I thought, but that kind of captured that. And the last one is just one of my favorites that's been hanging on my wall for probably 30 years. Reasonable people with a common understanding seldom disagree. And oftentimes with my kids, I always go, I have to tell them they're reasonable, but that's where it falls down right there, being unreasonable. So anyway, okay, very good. Everybody good with that? My intent is just to leave those up there. I'll check with them and see if they can do that or not, and we'll tweak the mission statement and get that sent out as well. So I'll try to get the agenda and things like that sent out a little earlier. I like having the balance of this week for Mike to get the notes done. And I was in Charlotte, North Carolina until the weekend this last week. So I was tied up, but we'll try to get those out a little earlier so we have time to think about it instead of just a couple days before the meeting, so. Okay. So for our next item, I'd like to jump into that is a brainstorming process. From my experience in brainstorming, we're looking for ideas. There's no bad ideas at this stage of the game. We're not going to criticize ideas, keep it positive, and looking for ideas, opportunities. When Don or Dan asked all of us to be part of this, certainly we had some thoughts or ideas about what that meant or what those opportunities might be. And the goal here today is to capture all those and to get them down on paper, and we'll categorize and we'll prioritize and we'll do all of those things later. But today, we'll start the process of trying to capture those ideas. I'm used to these processes taking, 3-4 hours, not an hour every 2 weeks in a meeting. So we may not finish that today. We may take those notes home with us, stew on it, get them out right away, stew on it, and then come back and do some more, and then work on the next steps after that. That's all right. So today, I really want to work on brainstorming. And if you see something that makes you think of something else, that's part of the value of doing it as a group. That's the collaboration. So questions, comments? All right, I'll start with any ideas you've got. Don, want to start us off? We don't have to go in a row. We can bounce around. Understood. But as a voice, I picked on you because you're on the corner. We can start here if you want.
Obviously, I wasn't there
Sure.
a couple weeks ago, but glad I had a little time today, and I went over everything we got here a month ago. One of the things that I was thinking about, and just looking through the restrictions on lots and that kind of stuff, because obviously when we're in a budget crunch, we either have to increase that revenue or decrease spending. And in talking to a few people, it sounds like the decreased spending, a lot of that has come from the state that there's no control over. And so my thought was, as I was looking at this from an ag perspective, the first thing that came into frame of mind was, what restrictions do we have in place? One, because I just don't have a background really of why these restrictions are in place and those types of things. And one of the things I thought was interesting is just in looking over the restrictions of Yankton County, it seems like there's a lot more restrictions relative to other counties as far as whether it's setbacks, whether it's minimum lot sizes, whether it's how we establish different things for central animal feeding operations, all of those types of things. And my thought was just kind of for the group is, and maybe you guys don't know, but why maybe some of these things were set where they were. And for a perfect example of that, I just look at, just because it's on the first page I got in front of me, like the central animal feeding operations, it looks like we have setbacks that are more than double any other county that's listed. And so my thought would be not necessarily, oh, we're wrong, is how did we come to those numbers and why? Just because I look at it and I'm like, well, if every other county is, so significantly away from where we are, and my thought is, just that specifically is, that's another way to, increase value on ag ground. Just because in the ag space, we are such an ag dominated county, how do we sit there and add, taxable value to that land? And there's really limited ways. You know what I mean? A lot of that ground is what it is. And so as I looked at that, just kind of my first thought was, hey, how did we get here? And why did we get kind of where we're at on all these restrictions? So if anybody has.
Constituents spoke 2018. In combined animal feeding operations, we're kind of starting to look at Yankton County as a place to come. There was a lot of reviewing of, we're very wet counties in various locations. We have developed a little different than other counties as well. But anyway, the constituents spoke very much against CAPOs as the kind of the abbreviation has come to be. Property owners. So particularly for you, we can maybe add to it up there. owner occupied property rights are very highly regarded in this county. So I own the 1 acre, you own the 50 next to me. You coming and putting the confined animal feeding operation on that 50 acres really strongly or adversely affects my owner occupied property rights. And we had a lot of people in the county who were very fearful and cautious of opening those restrictions up because of how it may affect their way of life. But yes, that is something Yankton County and for southeastern South Dakota, we are probably one of the most restrictive on that, on wind and on solar. So.
Gotcha.
So the idea that I want to capture, and there's obviously a lot of next level discussions that can go into all these about the whys and hows and what they should be and so on and so forth. But the idea we're capturing here is that as a way to raise revenue, relaxing some of the restrictions, whatever that means, in whatever form it is, in the ag sector, do we want to list specifically CAFOs and solar and wind, or is that, I can list all three of those. Does they all affect rural lands in the county?
I'd say ag sector is broad enough. I would say that when we're brainstorming, put the idea up there, small group breaks, and they see the why. Maybe they see, again, we're looking at 2018. That was a few years ago now. I mean, by the time, our vision is several years down the road. So that ordinance from 2018 is 10 years old. What's changed? We actually recently approved a CAFO because of some technological advances, right? Like the fans and some different things to allow us to approve it with minimal setbacks. So yeah, I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah, there was literally about a 2-year process of discussion of commission meetings just on this topic. And so I think, there was, it got to the point where, yeah, they were trying to find compromises to where everybody was at least somewhat happy with what was going on. But yeah, we're always looking at the ordinances to see what kind of changes we might be looking for and how things change through the years, technology change as stated. Maybe there's time, maybe it's time to revisit some of those things again.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense because I moved back in 2019 and I was like, I haven't heard anything about it, which kind of times out.
The sheriff had to be at most of those county commission meetings for about 2 years.
I believe it. And I would say too, when just from a relaxed restrictions perspective, the stuff we had handed out there too, CAFOs was on the first page, but I would almost extend it to, just lot restrictions in general. Not just on that side of it, but the rest of as I was looking at it, there's counties with 1 or 2 restrictions in place, and obviously we have the lake and those special zonings. But I was looking at it and I was like, whoa, we've got 8, 10, 3, 4 times as many as some other counties. So I just once again just don't know how that all kind of came about. But just looking at things like that to encourage that development, obviously, because you look at and this is just me being in the cohort of upper 20s, lower 30s, people. A lot of my friends are like, oh, I would love to go build on an acreage. But unless it's an established acreage, it's very difficult to do right now because you either got to get 40 acres or it's got to be, zoned differently too. So that's kind of, just generally my thoughts when I was kind of.
So what should it feels like I should add a bullet underneath of this one, just general,
maybe it would be. Yeah, I think lot size kind of.
First of all, the commission probably didn't get into any of this. They wanted to know what the county, the 23,000 people, not whether they have people or not people.
right?
That could be end result. They want to know what, because Sam talked about that. True fact is, I sat through dozens of meetings and 23,000 people represented there. There's probably about 5 to 7 at most meetings. And they were yelling and screaming like a whore at church. And didn't do any good.
Vocal minority.
And that's what we have to find out. We have to find out what the people want. What will they buy?
That's excellent. That's exactly right.
Back to citizens of Yankton County, all 23,000.
It's okay.
Sure.
And it went in after I purchased my property. I was not a state owner. And it was one of those things that it was, I believe it was owned by Smithfield. I'm not sure who was. The farmer went ahead and jumped on it. We thought he could make a lot of money on it. Didn't make money on it. All the refuse was coming over onto our land, going into the creek beds, going into the aquifers right there. We had a major, major issue with it. Not only with the aroma, if you want to call it that, but all of the contaminations that were going on. The guy finally got shut down because of all the violations that are just very evident of what was going on. And I spoke up against it because it was a violation to us and everyone downstream from it. That was in Clay County, but I still own the property and I'm still dealing with all the effects this many years later on that property. So I have a real problem with CAFOs.
Yeah.
Our neighbor owns CAFOs in Iowa. He finally just got out of the business this last year. He said he could not make money to exist. There again, Smithfield or whoever he was contracting with, they don't pay enough. He said, I make more on my retirement than what I could ever do with his large confinement. So he said, it wasn't worth it. And he said, now I'm left with all the stuff to have to deal with. So it's not a pretty sight when you start looking at all the details of it.
Yeah.
So, I think it's worth having, again, as we get these brainstorms, ideas up, we're gonna build some pillars. And I guess I imagine small groups getting together and really digging in to those pillars. And then again, we're a recommendation body, so let the county commissioners deal with the recommendations of what that looks like, right? So if we do decide that, I'll use the dirty word one more time, but I really don't want to hear it again because I was here for those 5-hour-long commission meetings, and I was here for the emotional toll it took on Yankton County and how divided we became with the race for the county commission seats, and it was not good for Yankton County. Neither has been wind or solar for Yankton County. It has created a division that does not need to be there. But we can still review that as an idea because to JJ's points, it is a way of increasing the pie. The pie does get bigger. Now we can have an expert come in and maybe say that the pie gets bigger on his piece of land and on my house next door gets slightly smaller. Let the experts do
Washes
that
out,
for us,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Let them paint the picture, but that's all. That is not for record. I don't know that for a fact. That property values swing that way. I don't want to get down that road. We did go down that road. When you reduce restrictions, you become a more friendly to business, right? Like more friendly to investment. What restrictions we reduce and how we reduce them and what we do, that's where we go back to our core values and prioritize the citizens of Yankton. So,
And on that, just on that route of it, the only other thing that I had mentioned, because I'm not, pro, this is just when I was looking at the way it was. The other thing I thought about, and it's not only just on the CAFO side, but when we're talking about lots for development, restrictions, that kind of stuff. And this, once again, is maybe just because I don't understand quite how the whole county structures, but I noticed some counties have it, unless there's a waiver. And so I don't know how common it is for, these restrictions not to be imposed because there's a waiver from a county commission or anything like that. But in my mind, if we're looking at different ways for, lotting, reducing those restrictions, maybe it's not necessarily, or, when you reduce them, you add a waiver, of the old distance of, you know what I mean? And not necessarily have to own a whole section of land and have to put it in the middle. But hey, you know what? As long as you're getting permission from the people around you, you can go forward with that. And just something to, I noticed that on other counties that we don't have.
And there's a process for that.
the last one we approved actually went through a waiver process. If you don't use a waiver in Yankton County, you have maybe 5 CAFO sites available. So truly, if you lay a map out and you map out and Google Earth setbacks and do all that, if you don't use a waiver, there is less than 10 applicable sites in Yankton County. So that is a necessary tool. What we have found with the waiver process is by the time you create the plan that is required and you go through all of that investment, relying on a waiver is sometimes a tough sell, right? If tomorrow morning I have my money in the bank, I'm just gonna try and buy the plot of land that meets all of the requirements set out by the county, so I don't have to risk it on a waiver. And that's how some of the forward investment works, right? So, we have that process, and if you ever want to talk planning, Mike is your guy. He is my co-chair of the planning commission. He can walk you through all of this, but yes, that is an important way.
Well, since my name has been taken in vain, let me throw in a thought here. And this brings together Don's point about what the citizens want. It brings together JJ's point about the restrictions. It brings together Sam's points about planning. It's extremely important that we have a sense of stability relative to our zoning ordinance. So as Gary pointed out, there was a 2 to 3 year process with CAFOs. We had a solar power task force that took place and lasted about 6 months, and the county planning commission acted on it and the county commission acted on it. We had a wind task force that lasted about 9 months. The county planning commission acted on it and the commission acted on it. Once those zoning laws are put in place, our citizens have a right to expect that they are not going to be changed unless there's an overriding reason to do so. So stability is extremely important. If some of our restrictions are too heavy-handed, let's consider them one at a time. But there's a reason why the way that they are the way they are. And we shouldn't take it in our heads that we're just going to change all of the ordinances that have been put in place over the last, let's say, 10 years, because people have made investments. People have decided, okay, I'm going to build my house right here. And they did it because they knew that those restrictions were in place. If we remove those restrictions, we've really stabbed them in the back. So I think it's important that we keep in mind that restrictions are there for a reason and that we need to have stability.
So when I think about this, when I step from a planning and zoning perspective, I think about compatible land use. One of the overarching principles would be that any land use ordinance, any change that you adopt would be generally compatible with the comprehensive plan. And the purpose of the comprehensive plan is to have those conversations with stakeholders over a long period of time, driven by experts. And then the comprehensive plan is not about writing individual ordinances, but it's about giving a broad philosophical approach to the way we see land use in a particular area. So perhaps these conversations are a reason for a recommendation. Maybe it's not to relax any particular restriction, but it's to revisit the comprehensive planning process to say, we might need to reevaluate the stakeholders in the future. And the purpose is to look 20 or more years in the future rather than to look 5 years in the future. That can then be the guide the planning commission looks to and says, whatever the topic is, if it's controversial, to say, I see 5 people here. I look at a comprehensive plan that tells me a broad cross-section of the community has told us this. These are the sorts of compatible land uses. Here's how we ought to get to that goal.
And then maybe nested within there is a couple of different philosophical approaches to the way you deal with sort of exceptions. And exceptions are always the challenging thing in land use. And so for me, it's helpful to think about something whereby you can have a set of rules that folks understand and cover the situations in general, and folks can plan their investments based on those decisions. If, in fact, you can't do that or choose not to do that, create processes, whether that's waivers or variances or conditional uses, the complexity of those steps tends to get more and more and more and more complex. And that's a philosophical choice that a government needs to make about whether their approach is more one of a basic set of understandable rules that covers most situations, but doesn't perfectly answer everything, but it says, here's what we're comfortable with. Or there's a process. And to be clear, the processes inject a significantly more subjectivity. So there's a continuum of a more subjective evaluation to a more objective evaluation, and a continuum there that individual governments have to choose their level of comfort with. And I think, you know, if I betray a little of my own approach, it would be if you've seen videos online of angry people, it tends to be in a process that injects more subjectivity rather than one that injects more objectivity, where you have measurables, and if the measurables are met, process moves forward.
But over time, correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, because you have a much clearer understanding of that than I do. I followed what you said there, but correct me if I'm wrong. Over time, as people's needs change, as technology changes, as industry changes, as some industries go away and some industries boom up and things like that, those things need to change. So a regular reevaluation of what those rules are to keep it simple and keep it stable are healthy as well. You can't have the same set of rules for 20 years.
Maybe so controversial in our part of the country.
Yep.
There are folks in different parts of the country where single-family zoning is the only zoning district in some jurisdictions. It's very, very difficult to build multi-family housing. That is not the case in the city of Yankton. It's not the case generally in our region. But that's an example where at some point in the past, the community said, this is our objective. Our objective is single-family homes. We're not interested in multi-family homes. And over time, the appetite and interest of those communities have shifted. And now there's, of course, tension between people who might say, I thought there would only be single family homes, and other people who would say, the reality of today means we need alternatives to these housing types in our community. We ought to think about changing the rules, even though these were rules that made sense when we adopted them at some point.
You talked about comprehensive plan. Does Yankton County have a comprehensive plan beyond the 5-year plan and the zoning document?
Yes.
Okay.
It was designed in 2003.
Okay. So are we saying that's something we should be looking at? I don't know that that's within our scope, but if that's driving the other two to some degree.
We say comprehensive zoning plan or comprehensive land use plan, or what exactly do you say comprehensive?
It's all entailing for the guidance for the scope of functions that the county offers and supports.
It is not a capital improvement plan, but there may be items in there that impact the choice based on infrastructure as well. That if you identify areas that are likely to grow, or a bridge that you might prioritize because of a particular anticipated land use, it's not a list of those things to do. That's a different process, but that would obviously inform those sorts of decisions where you go, gosh, it looks like we need to devote infrastructure resources to this area.
But you could also, in lieu of a comprehensive plan, going through that full process, if this group wanted to, we could do a simple SWOT analysis of Yankton County and kind of read it into a comprehensive plan. That was actually one of the good ones later, because to Brad's point, do we have a place that has a pretty new bridge and a pretty nice road that has some land available that can fit the budget of the people who want to build homes there, that isn't going to be used for another use, right? That's where you can start looking and say, wow, that's a strength of us, or it's an opportunity. Maybe it's there. You know, what weaknesses do we have? Oh, shoot, there is a bridge that needs to be replaced, or could if we put an influx of traffic in that area, or we're hauling rock crushers over a bridge that weigh a lot, right? But that was gonna be one of my recommendations, is that something simple enough that this group would be able to probably put our arms around and use it to kind of guide this group further.
Good conversation.
There's been no tweaks to the 2003 plan,
Well, you could,
and there's no enforcement.
to be honest with you, and it's been a while since I read the comprehensive plan, but it seems like more of a marketing document than anything. And it's not really as it exists, a planning document. What happened was that the zoning ordinance it appears to have grown out of that comprehensive plan and is now acting as a comprehensive plan. Is that about right, Gary? Would that be fair?
Somewhat.
Yeah. So,
It guides what can and can't be done in the enforcement, to your point. The only real enforcement opportunities there are is through that process, through that document.
And I will say, look at the city of Yankton plan on their website. If you look at ours, they are basically rated for two different audiences. You know, and I wear a hat for the Parks and Rec Board, and like I said last time, we already know planned expenditures out to 2030. Roughly based on that comprehensive plan, they know there's gonna need to be a park on West Indies Road, they know they're gonna do this, that, or the other thing. Ours is maybe not, the county level is not that structured. But there's definitely some opportunities there.
But correct me if I'm wrong, though, the county has a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a highway plan.
Focus
Correct,
on roads.
correct. A road plan.
And so like, what we're missing is the ordinance the planning commission uses. It has an end, it has a period, it has a comprehensive plan paints out where we're going and how we're going to get there. It's hard, to Brad's point, very subjective decisions are made at the planning commission level. Next week, we will be looking at a garage that's 6 inches from the property line or whatever it is, right? And 3 months ago, we had a garage that was 5 feet from the property line that we had to say no to. This particular person's hardship might be enough that the planning commission may want to say yes, but once we set that precedence, we're in a slippery slope. 6 inches from a property line, right? So learning about that and making some decisions. You know, years ago, we identified an opportunity. There was a commissioner who identified an opportunity for Yankton. They actually went as far to grid off all that land, Deer Boulevard, Timberland Park, all the way up to Chalkstone, the commissioner themselves did, and there was a plan to start doing that. That's an opportunity for us right there. It's close. You got Timberland Park that they're already paying city sewer, right? Like, there's some stuff there that is, and we don't have that. If I sit down and read the plan manual, it doesn't tell me that we should be looking for growth right there. That's what we need as a comprehensive plan.
Do you realize that the census does that? The US Census goes ahead and does all of these planning things and does surveys and everything for this, and it is available.
That's a tool or a resource, and maybe we should look at that and maybe write that underneath comprehensive plan, the census data, right?
It's a community study is what it is.
Yeah.
Very correct. And very detailed in providing information that a company or organization might want to consider when they're coming to, if they were coming to games.
Yes, sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Populations.
goal.
Yep.
So it's a marketing document, to the earlier point, as opposed to a plan per se, on a future growth plan or a future development plan.
And like was just said, we did do a transportation study recently in the Lake area that gridded out some of those possible future roads and things. And there are some families now that are starting to have that discussion of whether they want to start developing those areas and things. And so there is some movement going on in that regard. But there's a lot of development going on the lake area right now. And there will be a lot more here in the next couple of years.
Is there any way, I'm just throwing this out there, is there any way a moratorium could be put in to stop the storage units? Because there is more and more and more storage units taking up the most valuable land out there. And if there is a moratorium that could be put in place to stop that and give a chance for this department or this group and the county commission to go ahead and assess things.
You're
Is
asking
that-
you're asking the wrong guy, but I can tell you what I think about moratoriums.
That-
It sends a message that we're closed for business. If-
Or,
even
or
even if,
assessing.
I mean, I hate to say it, if Kelly has $1 and I have 10, and the money works out for me to buy that land and put my storage units on it, I'm gonna buy that and do it. And I don't disagree. Years ago, Yankton was, I mean, I've been a lifetime Yankton resident besides 5 years I was in Cody, Wyoming. Years ago, the reason we have what we have in place is because the people out at the lake did not want it to be Lake Okoboji. They've been over there, they saw it, they realized that because of where state park land was in conjunction with the lake and that resource, that if we did some restrictions that matched that area, we could slow that down and eventually probably stop it. We still have those same people in the county, I mean, and then rightfully so. I prefer not to have houses stacked right on top of each other, right? But as it comes to lakeside commercial, if that's where the money is, that's where the money is. Now, instead of putting a moratorium, give them a resource that makes it where storage units going down there is no longer the most valuable use. You get me water down there, and Kelly and I'm gonna put up a car wash for all the boats or whatever, right? Or you get me water down there and sewer, and we're gonna put a restaurant, because Highway 52 has great traffic data.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the best in southeastern South Dakota. Right now, there is no value to that land besides storage units.
Yep.
If we give them the resource though, trust me, that land will be valued beyond
I think-
campgrounds and.
I think we're missing one major point historically. That land has been owned by 1 or 2 families for 50 years, and they had absolutely no intention of developing.
So I'm gonna just take a minute to kind of stop the conversation for just a minute. So we kind of got off the path. I thought it was good. I let it go for a while because there's good conversation. I think there's good learning about something JJ brought up. It's like, why? You know, why is this? Why is that? And there's always going to be a lot of that, I think, sprinkled in here because we all, you know, some of this, you know, Don's been around for a while and been involved in it heavily for a while. And Sam, you've been involved more recently, but some of the reasons why you guys may have in your head and the rest of us don't. So that's good. And I appreciate that. But I would like to give everybody an opportunity to throw ideas on the board before you run out of time today. So
My simple idea, like one sentence, do we have a business incubator district or just a quick, and again, this group is not investors. I mean, we're not gonna spend money making this. But do we have a way, even tomorrow wanted to put up a couple of buildings and start a couple businesses or whatever it is to make it so that path is so much easier.
I like that.
So
Other ideas? Yeah, wait.
Potential revenue. And again, these are just ideas. We
Sure.
don't have to talk about them, but.
I want to capture them.
Maybe expand the inmate population by expanding the current jail facilities. I know that seems to be a big revenue for the county. The other one is, consider looking into a professional grant writing service. I know that we pursue grants, but I'm just telling you, there are a lot more out there, which would help pay for roads, bridges, other things. And then I'm not proposing this, so don't make it the headline. But I think if you're gonna have a bridge plan, like we talked about, and you don't have the money to do it, then look at what an opt-out would look like. Like you can at least look at it and say, what would this cost if we aligned it with a 4-year bridge plan? Or, and you know what, you might have to move, maybe it's too much, so you cut back on the number of bridges, but you can't have a plan without resources. And otherwise you get nowhere with it. And so I just think that is just something to at least look at.
Yep. Good. Oh. Nothing sticky on there. Well, all right, who's next?
Well, I'll go off the high dive since Dr. Kendall already did into the empty swimming pool. And I'll say, to summarize some of the things that have been talked about here, that would be a sanitary sewer for the lake area. And for those of you who haven't been involved in it, there have been repeated efforts at this, including a very detailed plan that ended up with a number in the neighborhood of $50 million to put in sanitary sewer in the lake area. Now, that particular plan was very comprehensive, and it's possible that a scaled down plan that would, let's say, only include the right along Highway 52 that connected up to the city's sanitary sewer system would be a place to start. And if that plan, if that was put in place, Sam's thought about restaurants and other types of development, upscale development, might be possible.
No franchise restaurant or hotel will build on sewer or septic, I mean.
Right. They have to have sanitary sewer.
And so because of that, we, as a lakeside commercial, have shot down or development to, as someone just pointed out, to storage units that aren't occupied because, you know, of those requirements, right? So that is something that should be discussed.
Just out of curiosity, from a sewer perspective, when you put something like that in, is there a requirement, or can you require people to hook onto that sewer to project revenue, or how does that work?
So the city has an ordinance that says if you're within, I don't know how many feet. There was, I thought it said a number of feet.
We have some people, it comes down to whether it's technically feasible.
Okay, anyway, there's a, they haven't, so we would have, you'd have to put that in play, is that all new development after this, you know, blah, 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 everyone else is grandfathered in.
Gotcha.
So that goes right by Chris Markle's house right there on 52.
Yeah.
He's still grandfathered in, but everything built after that day,
Right.
if reasonable, can hook up to it.
Right.
Gotcha.
That's that would be the idea, is that you're not threatening and at the same time you're facilitating the opportunity for new development.
And like people like Dollar General, at 20 years when their septic goes out, you would hope that maybe they would opt in, even if it's a little additional cost, that they would opt in to connect. Just so that way it's.
Rather than redo their septic.
One
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
expense, you know, so, but yeah, so that would be, and that's, so for those who haven't been following, this is the largest area in South Dakota with most population density that does not have a sanitary sewer district.
Right.
So it is a concern. It is close to a natural resource. It is a lot of concern. And to Dr. Kendall's point, it may be a good fit for if we had resources to write professional grants and
Right.
express the need beyond that of South Dakota and regional resources. Because there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of interested parties in concern with what we have going on now.
If we're looking at a sanitary sewer system, or, for example, what they did around, Lake Richmond and Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Don't the people within that district vote on it?
Yeah,
Okay, so
basically, like, in the Aberdeen one, they were actually forced to
Yeah,
because of violations that
Yeah,
they were required to go into a sanitary sewer district.
so until the federal government comes in and says, ain't using them septic systems anymore. There's not many people down in Riverside Acres that are gonna pay an extra $300 a month for to be on a sewer. The vote is never gonna pass.
But there are communities, like I worked for City of Scottsdale for quite a few years and that, you know, they have development fees to help with oversizing lines and things that developers needed to keep those processes going. They had a payback system to where anybody, like you talked about payback, anybody that hooked into it within 10 years the developer got that funding back. There's a lot of different things that can be incorporated and the requirements that you do have to hook in within 600 feet or if it makes sense, you know, those kind of things. There's a lot of things you can do there, but like was stated, it's not a cheap process and it doesn't get cheaper.
nope.
It's gonna keep going up and up. In 10, 20 years, it might be double now, so.
At this,
those are-
and at this point, guys, I don't want to shoot anything down. I just want to get ideas on paper. We can have the detailed conversation later.
We need to leverage townships and small communities. You know, I think part of the SWOT analysis should be each of those communities. So if I remember right, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, Utica has water, they just don't have lots. Gayville is tapped out, almost tapped out on water,
I'm not sure.
but I think that needs to be because again, those are not gonna say almost cookie cutter, but it becomes a little easier for me to build on right next to Utica if they have water.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure Utica does, I'm pretty sure Dayville's almost maxed out, right?
And that's another idea too that we should look at is, you know, trying to talk a little more with some of these smaller towns and see what can be done and have some development in those areas too would be a good discussion.
So, oops, missed me. So leveraging townships, do you want anything added to that, Gary?
The towns, yeah.
I guess, I think of communities and towns the same, but maybe I'm using the wrong term.
Like, I will tell you, if you get a gas station or something in one of those towns,
Yeah.
it's gonna help the county, but it's also gonna help them.
So Terry's not here to defend himself, and I don't want to get into an argument about BY Water, but it seems like Dan, invited Terry up purposefully. It sounds like there's been some challenges in the past, and I've heard that too with BY Water. And Terry talked about some of the poor planning people have done on developing something and then bringing water in at the very last minute. And I can see how that could get turned into being a big public brouhaha against BY Water when maybe it wasn't their fault at all. You know what I mean? But we still have a single source, player there that provides all the water for certain areas. And what is realistic to expect from a long-term development perspective? And if we're gonna do something here, we've got to get to those people that far ahead of time. So in our last, one of the other meetings we had, we talked about utilities, and as potential bottlenecks. And so it seems to me, and I'll just throw it up there. I mean, we've got to look at all utilities. We talked about, some of the other ones. Yeah, up here. Oh, sanitary sewer. I mean, to me, there's water, electricity. We should be looking at all of those.
As a separate lump. I been last time, Yankton County got a deal.
I think,
I've seen little towns get it.
Well, not necessarily structure, but Yankees just have a large one. But Yankton gets quite a few GOE.
It's not infrastructure.
Okay.
Private capital.
I would say when we do a utility review, one of our strengths is we have ETJ around the city of Yankton. That's plan growth, and,
We have what?
what?
Extraterritorial jurisdiction.
Extra-
ETJ, 1
okay.
mile from city limit.
Got it.
It can be up.
I don't know how many of you knew that term. I didn't. I never
Yeah.
heard that. Yeah.
It can be up to 3 miles from city limits. I'm about positive, don't quote me. Anyway, that is a benefit for us. So we have ETJ. We kind of know what we want in ETJ, housing and things that support the community, right? Our ETJ doesn't have a lot of issues like Vermillion. They got to cross Highway 50, and that's a huge concern right now. Is they have no control on Highway 50, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on over there. If we're gonna do utilities, or if we're gonna try and bite off something, pushing growth that way, prioritizing growth that way, easing up how to grow in those directions will be the greatest benefit if we do it correctly and we partner with the city of Yankton. So I think when you do utility review, I think ETJ needs to be a piece of that, because there is already some houses in there that aren't gonna be, they're gonna provide the same service as the new development, but how do we make it so that it blends together? And if the future owner or future use of that residence wants to jump on board, they can.
Somebody else had their hand up.
I have something that I am an adamant person about,
Sure.
Dark Sky International. Stephanie might know a little bit about this also. Dark Sky International is a huge ecotourism event that can occur in any community. And Tucson, there's a lot of cities that built into this or bought into this. Yellowstone was bought into this. There's so many benefits to having Dark Sky International criteria for a community. You do bring in the ecotourism because of dark sky. You have a huge issue with satellite surveillance and things at nighttime. This is a national security issue. It also is lower utility rates for the community, for the residents. National Park is very, very in favor of getting the dark sky here because of the bridge. We have walked the bridge with some of the county commissioners to try to get that in place, and they didn't want to change out the lights because of the cost. There are certain light restrictions or designs that are specific for Dark Sky International. You can go ahead and Google all the different things on it. It's a worldwide organization, but it's a very, very comprehensive program. It is something that saves the city money, or can save the city money. And those cities that have implemented have seen a huge, huge benefit to saving money on generation and all the entities that go with it. So that's something I would really, really stress. Is that direction.
Put it on
Oh,
the
yeah.
board.
Light pollution, someone could look
Yeah,
at.
light pollution.
See if it's feasible.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would say another thing too, just be mindful of our tourism. And I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, somebody probably knows more than I do. When was the last time we, reviewed at the county level, commissioner level, planning, whatever, at how our tourism trends are? I mean, I haven't in my time, but when I was in Cody, Wyoming, I was on the Park County Travel Council, and we issued a lot of money. We watched a lot of trends to see, and it was amazing in my 5 years. What a tourist was in 2019 was completely different by 2023 when I, ended up stepping away. So understanding who our audience is right now might be important too to make some decisions.
It's saying 1 million visitors a year at the lake.
1.3.
It's gone up. If you want those numbers, you can get those from they have them. They also know who's here and who's not.
And maybe we lost a sector. Why did we lose them?
Mhm.
Yeah, $4 gas. We got to drive to Rapid City after this at 9 miles an hour.
You know, if you think about just in the last 5-6 years, going through COVID and what happened with campers and campgrounds and all of that, I would say today's visitor, there's a good probability that today's visitor to Yankton County, big capital V for visitor, is much different than it was 10 years ago. So, and what the impact of that is.
And this year it's even going to be different with fuel prices.
Sure. Wayne?
Couple more things. Full utilization of Napa Junction. No, I'm not sure that that is completely done and where that can go. And then, I still want to know more about the governor's sales tax. Because you can see a number that maybe it would replace 80% of owner occupied, but how did they get to that number? Like, what does that mean? So I think that's worth looking at, for owner occupied. So.
Sales tax owner
That's the
occupied?
governor's plan. I can't remember the exact word of it, but
Senate Bill 96.
yeah.
It's a half a cent sales tax on all sales outside of the county. It has to go to a vote. And I warn you about that. They'll drive equipment buyers, buy high price HVAC, everything in the county to another county that's not offering it. It will go to their bottom line. So our equipment dealers are.
Sure. But at a high level, it's a half-cent sales tax.
Half-cent sales tax.
Outside of, you said outside of the county. I didn't follow that.
Inside of the county.
Inside the county. Got it. Got it. Outside the municipality. Got it. Okay. Got it. Got it. And what's
96. I guess,
So-
yeah.
So if it'll be imposed on people who live in Yankton
Yep.
and then anyone who does business outside the county.
SB 96. And that group that looks at that, something might be considered if we're talking to stakeholders is, and I don't know if you're allowed to, but are you allowed to pass it with,
No.
Uh,
No restriction. I asked.
okay.
It's on everything.
Because that'd be one option if they provided with restrictions, we could talk to our groups and then say, how do we make this work for us? Because fast goods, the tourist probably isn't gonna go drive out of our county to go buy their
Correct.
Dollar General, but to her point, yes, so, but I still think it's worth definitely looking at and focusing in on.
I just want to go back to the Don. I know Nancy and I both have very good relationships with GUD. Maybe much like we had Mr. Schaefer come to legislative audit, we could invite GUD to come talk, because not only do they have programs for counties but also for private individuals. So, I think it gets confusing, but maybe down the road, when we
Talk to the.
have time, we could invite. Yeah. I think it kind of, I think it would probably clear up some confusion on their programs.
I'm just gonna put down learn/leverage QED.
Believe it.
Julie, when you're talking tourism trends, you said the state has that data. Is it the state tourism bureau? Okay. Is it available online?
Yeah, Jerry.
Online,
Just a
can you
couple
find it?
thoughts I had. One of the big resources should probably focus on is the Missouri River. You just have to look at the Colorado River Basin and see what's going on out there. They're gonna start looking our way soon. And city has water rights. Smoot County, I mean, water rights in there that are historic. Beyond just the tourism and fishing, I mean, that's a resource. The other thing I think back to when Dan Clemish 2 weeks ago talked about county development, that there's so much upfront costs, but the costs come for them before the revenue, that maybe a big part of our focus should be development inside the city limits. That'll benefit the county too. They have the utilities, the infrastructure in place for most of that. That might be a quicker source of added county revenue.
You can add that to ETJ
Yeah,
because that,
and the grants.
Right.
Something else to do.
When I wrote in our task force, both near and long-term sustainability factors, that's exactly the point I was trying to make there. Is because you can't outspend on the front end without the revenue and so on and so forth. There's those risks. And so that's, you've got, whatever we recommend has got to be sustainable, near-term, long-term. So what do I write down to capture your point? 'Cause you're a little
Just, well, yeah, focus on.
right here.
Yeah, near-term development, ETJ and the city.
I like that term near term development. That's the lowest barrier.
The other thing I think, well, it's becoming hateful. Be with a river here, that would be one advantage this county would have.
And it'll never be enough. Based on everything you hear or read, it'll never be enough. So. What else?
Touched on the number of opportunity cards, agriculture. Good example is right now, ethanol under question under the farm program. That doesn't pass, that will see disastrous results. Probably takes away 20-30% of the margin.
He's 30%.
30%. 30% of the margin that goes through ethanol.
So that's detrimental to the farmers. So the idea,
It's good for them
If they pass it.
if they pass it.
right.
Did they just pass the farm bill?
No,
Well,
not
they
that,
get
no
even
part.
And
12 comes up on it.
I think, again, that's if we looked at a SWOT and maybe we break the SWOT up into residential development in the county, ag development in the county, and business development in the county, or something like that. Then we could actually look at a threat or look at a strength. Are we poised for generational growth in the ag sector? Because JJ has siblings. Are they all able to take over the farm? Or what would it look for them to all take over the farm? Or what would be needed? Do we have that, or is that a weakness? I almost think we need to look at that as well, because we're talking about some threats, we're talking about some other things. And I think we also need to look at, and I think it could be included in that, are we having a lot of learning loss? Are we losing our high school graduates? Are we losing Mount Marty graduates? Why are we losing them? And is that a weakness? Because to JJ's point, a lot of the kids that we grew up with probably moved away and then they came back. So is that an indication of there's not enough jobs open at any given time? A strength, we don't have a lot of unemployment, right? But also it's a weakness if we're trying to get and keep and have those people invest. Because when we graduate, we get our jobs and we buy a car and then we want to build a house or whatever. I would like to look at maybe that as well. How do we retain some of the investment the county already has, whether or in the school district? Dr. Kendall spends a lot of his time making sure that we learned a lot. So how do we make sure we stay or spend more in our county?
And to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, I've done a lot of talking to young families and things, and they always state the same thing. where Yankton's a great place to raise a family, but before then, it's kind of, we want to go, experience life, come back and do that. So there's kind of a lost section there where they'll go off, maybe they'll start a business somewhere else and then they won't come back, or the few that come do. So
Sure.
this is kind of a common thread that I'm hearing.
The earlier stage retention.
Another thing, years ago, I was on the board of 1 Million Cups and we met in Yankton and we met in Vermillion, blah, blah, blah. There was a lot of talk about how we grow from Yankton to Vermillion collectively.
Hmm.
And how we piggyback off of their success and use that and do that. And I am not sure, and don't say it's not happening because it could be happening, but let's make sure that we are forgetting some of our neighbors too. I mean, when the region grows, we grow.
The boat rise. What's the word?
Regional success.
An example of that might be, and this goes back to whether you have to find out what our population wants and what they don't want. That's what 10 people want. 23,000 people don't want. But example, the CO2 pipeline to bring in gazillions of dollars.
So you're right, CO2 pipeline, or is there a bigger category to lump that into?
Well, $3,000, if they say they don't want it, that's fine, do away with it, we have to do it. People have to know their options, and they have to know if this doesn't happen, what happens? Do they know that CO2 pipeline is gonna be very, very instrumental on the success or failure of ethanol plants? If I would guess in the 23,000 people in our county, I doubt that 500 know that.
But when we go back to regional success, a lot of the big projects, when you start talking hundreds of millions of dollars, due to the nature of the project, Yankton County isn't enough. We may need an additional resource, that we may need to pull something from somewhere else. We may need neighboring counties to provide exception or something. So particularly another dirty one that did not go well in the county was the wind project. Turner was 66 of them and we were 30 roughly, 17, whatever we were, right? And that was just how their project of that scope, it needed at least 2 counties to work, correct?
Mhm.
And so that might not be the project that we want as constituents, and that's okay. But there's other projects of that nature that will require something. A CO2 pipeline from somebody neighboring, natural gas, we are out, so we need more. It's gonna have to help. So that regional partnership, that regional success, that is big on the economic development. And ultimately, if Vermillion grows and gets another good employer, and Yankton, we have created a better path to develop our ETJ or wherever, they may be Yankton County residents. They may just leave for 8 hours a day, which is okay because they're Yankton County residents. So we really need to put an idea on that. And that involves tourism, that involves business retention and growth. Again, we can't tell them what to do, but when they're successful, we will likely reap some benefit.
I think having lived in Iowa for a while and having the 5 cent per can
Yeah.
tax over there, Michigan's 10 cents. And I've always thought this is a really good way of an area to go ahead and raise monies. And if that could be used, so many of the people, the campers that are coming in here, they have a tendency, and my husband works at the park and I'm there quite a bit. most of the people bring in their food. The one thing that they don't bring in is the beer and the drinks, because they pick them up here. And not that I want to penalize anybody from coming in from out of state, but they're doing it here because they don't want to pay the 5 or 10 cent sales tax in other states. But that's something that could be entertained to possibly look as an additional revenue just for Yankton County.
We have friends from Grand Island, Nebraska that come up every summer to the park. Every summer they take back 2 pallets of beer. 2 pallets.
Well, that's a lot of money missing from our coffers. Could. That's a lot. Oh.
Do we have any programs that currently award investment in the county? Or incentivize?
I don't think
So that's a good question, and that's a good area that we ought to be looking at. What can the county do to justify spending 23,000 people's tax money on a chance of getting another ammunition building?
Do we have a tourism council in Yankton? And they award various amounts of tourism type projects, right? Well, saying it more public record than anything, but
So we're about 3 minutes to 1. And in my experience, when you're getting in these brainstorming things, the first hour or so is easy and the next half hour is harder, but that's where the good stuff comes out, you know, the less obvious stuff. I'd like to continue this process. Next time we get together, we'll just continue this. And then we're going to want to, I think, categorize some of these, get them in buckets that make sense so we can start looking at maybe doing SWOT analysis on those, maybe do a SWOT analysis overall in Yankton County, and kind of go on with the next steps from there. But because Don asked me to be a facilitator and I'm not the most knowledgeable about county government, how it works, I could use a little help on some of that categorization. So
Tax and refund or
Sure.
whatever it's referred to, return, rebate, whatever it's referred to as. That gives people a
Yep.
chance to get that money back.
Yep. So good.
You're talking about very sensitive outside the office, and thank you.
A good conversation. Next meeting is in 2 weeks. What's the date on that? Make sure everybody's good with that. So we are May 21st. Same time, same place. Good?
Yep.
All right. Appreciate everybody's time today. We got to try to get these notes out sooner so you can have more time to be thinking about the next level of brainstorm we'll do next session. Thank you.
Of course you
That's
are.
not good,
Yeah.
Crasher.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie, even though she didn't say anything, we were just listening.
Congratulations.
It's really valuable.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a nice little.
Yeah.
Yeah.